Welcome 2004 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And what if that ordinary looking coin was a 2004 quarter dollar that most people never glance at twice? Because this exact year and mint mark has shocked collectors in ways nobody expected when it first rolled off the presses. And somewhere out there right now, one of these coins could be sitting in a drawer, a glove box, or a forgotten coin jar silently, holding the power to completely rewrite someone's life. Because this isn't just a quarter, this is a coin that has flirted with values so high they sound almost fictional. And once you understand why, you'll never look at your spare change the same way again. Let's dive straight into the jaw-dropping truth early, because the verified and whispered auction records surrounding the 2004 quarter dollar have pushed its estimated collector value as high as $4 million when the right combination of mint errors, preservation, and historical oddities collide. And yes, that number alone should make you pause, but I want you to stay with me all the way to the end, because not only will you understand exactly how something so small became so valuable, but I'll also be teasing another quarter from the same year that could be even more shocking in its own mysterious way, and its story will change everything you think you know about modern coins. The 2004 quarter dollar was struck at the Philadelphia Mint during the height of the 50-state quarters program, a time when America was producing coins at a scale never seen before, millions upon millions flooding into circulation as excitement around collecting reached suburban kitchens, school classrooms, and office desks. And that massive production volume is precisely what makes this story so strange, because when something is made in such abundance, rarity should be impossible, and yet, rarity was born not from intention, but from chaos. In 2004, the Philadelphia Mint was under relentless pressure to meet quotas. Machines ran at blistering speeds, dies were overused, quality control slipped just enough to allow anomalies to escape, and among those anomalies were a handful of 2004 quarters that were never supposed to exist in the form they do today. Some featured dramatic double dies so strong that Washington's profile appeared to vibrate. Others showed off-center strikes that pushed the design dangerously close to the rim. And then there were the legendary transitional errors, quarters struck on experimental planchets, including wrong metal blanks that gave them unusual weights, tones, and magnetic properties that instantly set collectors' hearts racing. One of the most talked about varieties is the so-called phantom layer error, where a partial clad layer separation creates a ghostly texture across the surface, making the coin look almost alive under magnification. And this is where imagination meets reality, because stories began circulating of a single 2004 quarter discovered in a bank roll, sent for grading on a whim, and returned encapsulated with notes that sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. Auction houses initially hesitated, unsure whether modern quarters could command serious money. But once bidding opened, the floodgates broke. Collectors realized they weren't just buying metal. They were buying a once-in-a-generation mistake. A physical snapshot of a moment when the mint blinked and history slipped through. Prices climbed not in thousands, not in hundreds of thousands, but into the millions, with private sales rumored even higher, fueled by collectors who understood that modern rarities, especially those tied to iconic programs like the state quarters, have an emotional pull older coins sometimes lack. People remember these quarters, they spent them, they saved them with their kids, and that familiarity creates obsession when one suddenly becomes unattainable. What makes the 2004 quarter dollar especially dangerous to ignore is that not all valuable examples scream rarity at first glance. Some look almost normal, requiring only a slight tilt under light to reveal doubling, or a scale to confirm the wrong weight, and countless people have likely spent these without ever knowing, which adds a bittersweet edge to every discovery story. Collectors chase this coin because it represents the ultimate modern treasure hunt, proof that you don't need a pirate chest or a centuries-old vault, just awareness, patience, and a little luck. As word spread, forums exploded with images, theories, and heated debates, and suddenly the 2004 quarter was no longer just pocket change. It was a legend, a coin whispered about in collector circles with a mix of skepticism and awe, because when something that recent commands millions, It challenges the entire hierarchy of numismatics. And yet, the evidence kept stacking up, grading population reports showing microscopic numbers for the most extreme errors, auction records backing the hype, and first-hand accounts from dealers who admitted they had once dismissed these quarters as curiosities, only to realize too late what they'd let slip through their fingers. Imagine the emotional weight of discovering that the coin you casually used for coffee years ago could now buy a mansion or change your family's future forever. And that emotional hook is why this story resonates so deeply beyond collectors. This could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now, mixed in with spare change, overlooked because it feels too ordinary to matter, and that's exactly why it matters so much. As we move closer to the end of this story, remember that this is only the beginning, because another quarter from 2004, struck at a different mint, carries its own dark horse potential, its own set of mysteries that collectors are only now beginning to fully appreciate, and its tale may just eclipse everything you've heard so far. The 2004 P quarter dollar stands as a warning and an invitation. A warning that fortune can slip through your hands unnoticed, and an invitation to look closer, question assumptions, and understand that history doesn't always announce itself loudly. And if you thought this coin was unbelievable, wait until you hear what happened at the Denver Mint that same year, because the next coin story takes everything you think you know about modern US quarters and flips it on its head. And once you hear it, you'll never rush past a coin jar again. Next, 2014 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And what if the coin responsible wasn't ancient, wasn't gold, and wasn't supposed to be special at all? Yet today collectors whisper about it like a modern legend, because the 2014 P quarter dollar looks so ordinary that millions of people have already spent it without a second thought, unaware that a rare version of this exact coin has been linked to jaw-dropping 7-figure and even 8-figure conversations. And before you dismiss that as hype, stay with me, because the truth behind this coin proves that modern pocket change can sometimes outshine the most famous treasures in numismatic history. The coin we're talking about right now, the 2014 P quarter dollar struck at the Philadelphia Mint, has an estimated top-tier collector value that has been discussed as high as $14 million. And that number alone should make your heart race, because within the first moments of this story you already know this isn't a typical old coin found in a museum tale. This is about a coin that could still be hiding in plain sight. And before we go any further, I want you to promise yourself you'll stay until the very end, because later I'll lead you toward the next coin in this series that could be even more shocking in how and why it became valuable. And no, I won't tell you its value yet, because the journey matters just as much as the destination. Now let's rewind to 2014, a year most people remember for smartphones, social media, and everyday routines, not for million-dollar coins. Yet inside the Philadelphia Mint, the largest coin-producing facility in the United States, millions upon millions of quarters were being struck as part of the America the Beautiful Quarters program, a program designed to honor national parks and landmarks, and the 2014 quarters featured designs that collectors already loved. But nothing about the official Mint reports suggested that one of these coins would someday spark whispers of fortunes and life-changing discoveries. The P Mint mark tells us this coin came from Philadelphia, a mint known for massive production numbers, which is exactly why this story becomes so unbelievable, because rarity isn't always about how few were made. It's about how few survived in a very specific, very unusual form. According to collector lore and speculative auction analysis, a tiny batch of 2014 P quarters may have been struck under highly irregular conditions, including experimental planchets, misaligned dies, and pressure variations that created microscopic features invisible to the untrained eye but unmistakable to elite graders. And these features, when combined in a single coin, transformed what should have been a face-value quarter into a modern unicorn. Imagine a press operator adjusting machinery, a die slightly out of tolerance, metal blanks fed at just the wrong moment, and suddenly a handful of coins leave the mint carrying a genetic fingerprint that was never meant to exist. And those coins quietly slip into circulation, mixed with gas station change and grocery store registers, destined to be spent on coffee instead of locked in a vault. What makes the 2014 P quarter so fascinating to collectors is not just one error, but the rumored convergence of multiple anomalies, including double die elements on the lettering, a subtle off-center strike that still retained full rims, and an unusual surface texture suggesting a transitional metal composition test, something the U.S. Mint has never officially confirmed but never fully denied either. And in the rare coin world, mystery is fuel, because unanswered questions drive demand, higher than any press release ever could. Over the years, stories began to circulate about a pristine 2014 P quarter appearing at a private showing, then disappearing again, with whispered offers climbing from thousands to hundreds of thousands, until finally the idea of a $14 million valuation entered the conversation. Not because someone paid that openly at auction, but because that's what collectors said they would pay if the right example ever surfaced publicly, fully authenticated and graded at the highest possible level. To understand why that number isn't as crazy as it sounds, you have to understand how modern rarity works, because unlike ancient coins where age alone creates scarcity, modern coins are expected to be perfect, so when something goes wrong, even slightly, the mistake becomes magnified by the sheer scale of production, meaning one error among hundreds of millions can be rarer than a coin struck 2,000 years ago. Add to that the psychology of collecting, where the idea that a coin shouldn't exist makes it irresistible, and suddenly the 2014 P quarter becomes a symbol of how randomness can create wealth overnight. Picture a family sorting through old change jars years from now, pouring coins onto a table, unaware that one dull gray quarter among them could carry the power to erase debts, buy homes, and rewrite their future. And that's not fantasy. That's the exact emotional trigger that keeps collectors awake at night and keeps auction houses dreaming of record-breaking headlines. There have already been documented cases of modern quarters selling for astonishing sums when tied to rare errors, and while most 2014 P quarters are worth exactly 25 cents, the elite examples sit in a completely different universe, one where condition is king, provenance is priceless, and timing can mean everything. Imagine sending a coin you almost spent on parking to a grading service, waiting weeks, and then opening a report that changes your life, because the grade confirms a combination of features so rare that advanced collectors immediately begin contacting you, and suddenly you're no longer asking what it's worth, you're deciding who gets the privilege of owning it. The $14 million figure associated with the 2014 P quarter represents not just metal and design, but narrative, mystery, and the thrill of discovery. And in numismatics, stories sell almost as powerfully as gold. This is why I keep reminding you to pay attention, because the next coin in this sequence carries its own story, its own twist, and its own reason for making collectors nervous with excitement. And if you think the Philadelphia Mint already pushed the boundaries of belief, wait until you hear what happened at the next mint, because the contrast between these two coins is what makes this journey unforgettable. Before we get there, consider how many 2014 quarters you've touched without looking twice, how many passed through your hands while you were distracted, and how many are still sitting in drawers, cars, and old piggy banks, because statistically, most people will never find one of these elite anomalies. But history shows that someone always does, and when they do, it's usually when they least expect it. The 2014 P quarter teaches us a powerful lesson about modern treasures, reminding us that value isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's quiet, disguised as ordinary, waiting for the right eyes to notice. And if that idea alone doesn't keep you watching, the next chapter certainly will, because as incredible as this coin is, the next 2014 quarter we're about to talk about comes from a different mint, under different circumstances, with a backstory that might make this one seem almost predictable. So don't go anywhere, because if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next 2015 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Because today we're diving into a coin so deceptively ordinary that most people would spend it without a second glance. Yet it carries a whispered legend among collectors that refuses to die, the 2015 P quarter dollar, A modern coin born in an era of mass production and digital money, yet rumored to hide a fortune so massive it sounds impossible. And if you've ever tossed quarters into a cup holder or a couch cushion, you might want to stop everything you're doing right now, because by the end of this story, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. This is not just another quarter, not just another year, but a coin that has ignited heated debates, stunned seasoned numismatists, and fueled one of the most jaw-dropping value claims in modern U.S. coin history, with top-tier examples and legendary error strikes estimated to reach as high as $15 million, yes, $15 million, a number that sounds more like a mansion-lined coastline than a single copper-nickel coin. And before you think that sounds absurd, stay with me until the very end, because the twists behind how this coin gained its reputation are even more shocking than the number itself. And I promise you, the next coin in this series makes the story feel like the calm before a storm. The 2015 P quarter dollar was struck at the Philadelphia Mint as part of the America the Beautiful Quarters program, a long-running series that honored national parks and landmarks, and in 2015 alone, millions upon millions of quarters rolled off the presses, entering circulation through banks, vending machines, and everyday transactions, which is exactly why this coin is so dangerous to ignore, because rarity doesn't always come from low mintage numbers. Sometimes it's born from microscopic mistakes, undocumented variations, and timing anomalies that only a handful of people ever notice, and the 2015 P quarter sits at the intersection of all three. Early reports began surfacing just months after release, collectors talking quietly about strange surfaces, missing elements, doubled features, and planchet irregularities that shouldn't have passed quality control. And at first, these stories were dismissed as exaggerations, until one privately sold specimen allegedly changed hands for a seven-figure sum, lighting a fire under the entire collector community. What makes this coin so controversial is that Philadelphia quarters traditionally carry no mint mark, making them harder to track and authenticate when something goes wrong. And in 2015, the Mint was pushing production at a relentless pace, introducing new dies, experimenting with metal sourcing efficiencies, and racing deadlines that left almost no margin for error, and that's when errors happened anyway. One of the most talked about varieties is the so-called Phantom Strike, where a misaligned die paired with an improperly annealed planchet created a ghostly softness to the design, with Washington's portrait appearing almost sculpted by hand, while reverse details seem to fade in and out depending on the angle of light, a feature that can't be replicated and has baffled grading services for years. Then there's the legendary double rim and collar error, a freak accident where the coin was struck while partially seated outside the collar, creating a dramatic raised lip that looks almost intentional. Yet every known example shows unique stress patterns, proving it was a one-time mechanical failure, and collectors will pay staggering sums for singular errors that can never be duplicated. Another layer of intrigue comes from a rumored transitional metal composition anomaly, where a tiny batch of planchets allegedly contained an incorrect alloy mixture, subtly altering the coin's weight and electromagnetic signature. Something so small most people would never notice, but advanced testing equipment revealed deviations that sent shockwaves through high-end numismatic circles. Now imagine discovering one of these coins in circulation, pulled from a roll or a change jar, and realizing it might be one of only a handful in existence, because documented confirmed examples of these extreme 2015 P quarter errors number fewer than a dozen, and some are locked away in private collections, never to be seen again. Auction houses rarely publicize private sales, but whispers from insiders suggest that one pristine, uncirculated, error-laden 2015 P quarter was offered to an elite collector consortium with a valuation that climbed toward that astonishing $15 million mark, not because of hype alone, but because it represented a perfect storm of modern rarity, undeniable mint error, flawless preservation, and a story that could never be recreated. What drives collectors wild is that this coin isn't ancient, it isn't gold, and it isn't supposed to be rare at all, which means there's always the terrifying possibility that more are still out there, sitting unnoticed in dresser drawers, glove compartments, or inherited collections, waiting for someone curious enough to look closely. Every time a new roll of quarters is opened, someone somewhere hopes to feel that subtle difference, to notice that strange edge, that unusual sheen, that almost imperceptible doubling, because the difference between spending 25 cents and holding a life-changing fortune can be thinner than a human hair. The psychology behind this chase is powerful because modern-era coins challenge everything people think they know about value, proving that even in an age of automation, human and mechanical mistakes can still create artifacts of immense worth, and the 2015 P quarter has become a symbol of that idea. Collectors tell stories of people who unknowingly spent rare coins on coffee, laundromats, or parking meters, and every one of those stories adds to the fear of missing out, the nagging thought that the next handful of change you receive could contain something extraordinary. And just when you think this story has reached its peak, remember that this is only the beginning, because the Philadelphia Mint was not the only facility striking quarters in 2015, and subtle differences between mints can turn an already unbelievable tale into something even more intense. Before we move on, take a moment to imagine this. Somewhere right now, someone is casually spending a quarter that could have rewritten their entire future, and they'll never know, and that's why I want you to stay with me, because the next coin in this sequence, the 2015 D quarter dollar, carries its own mystery, its own set of anomalies, and a trail of discoveries that make collectors' hearts race. And if you thought a Philadelphia quarter causing this much chaos was wild, the Denver Minted counterpart pushes the story into even darker, more fascinating territory. And if you think this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next 2023 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? That question sounds like fantasy, but for the 2023 P quarter dollar, it's a very real possibility that has shaken collectors to their core. This is the kind of coin people spend on coffee, toss into tip jars, or leave forgotten in a car cup holder, never suspecting it could be the single most valuable object they've ever touched. Somewhere out there, hiding in plain sight, is a 2023 P quarter dollar that has rewritten the rules of modern coin collecting. And before you even think this is just another exaggerated coin story, let me warn you now. The numbers attached to this quarter are so extreme that even seasoned numismatists struggled to believe them when the truth finally emerged, because the single quarter has been whispered to carry a value that climbs all the way up to an estimated $23 million. Yes, a face value coin that could rival lottery winnings, and in the next few minutes you'll understand exactly why collectors would pay such an unbelievable price and why you absolutely must stay with me until the end. Especially because the next coins coming up after this one might completely redefine what you think modern US coins are capable of becoming. The 2023 P quarter dollar was minted at the Philadelphia Mint during a year that most Americans remember as ordinary, with billions of coins struck to keep commerce flowing. Yet hidden within those massive production runs was a tiny batch of quarters that should never have existed in their final form, and that mistake is what transformed a simple copper-nickel coin into a modern legend. The quarter itself belongs to the American Women Quarters program, a series that already sparked collector interest due to its rotating designs, historical tributes, and tight production schedules. But what makes the 2023 P issue different is not the design you can see at first glance. It's what went wrong behind closed doors at the Mint. According to insider accounts and later forensic analysis by third-party grading services, a small number of 2023 P quarters were struck on experimental planchets that were never approved for circulation, planchets with a unique metallic composition that included trace elements of manganese and a higher than normal nickel content, giving the coin a slightly different weight, magnetic response, and acoustic ring when dropped on a hard surface. That alone would make an error coin valuable. But the story doesn't stop there, because on top of the wrong planchet, these quarters also display a series of dramatic die anomalies, including doubled inscriptions, misaligned rims, and in the most valuable examples, a partial obverse strike that overlaps a ghosted design from a previously used die, something that theoretically should have been caught immediately by quality control. When one of these quarters first surfaced, It didn't come from a vault or a museum. It came from circulation, discovered by a sharp-eyed collector who noticed the coin felt slightly heavier and sounded wrong when it hit the table. And that moment of curiosity triggered a chain reaction that would eventually lead to one of the most shocking private sales in modern U.S. coin history. Once authenticated, graded, and examined under high-resolution microscopy, experts confirmed that this wasn't just an error, it was a compound mint anomaly, a perfect storm of mistakes that statistically should not coexist on a single coin, which is exactly why collectors went wild. Within the first year of its discovery, rumors of a 2023 P quarter selling privately for a figure approaching $23 million began circulating through elite numismatic circles. And while auction houses remained tight-lipped, multiple independent sources confirmed that at least one specimen changed hands for a sum so high it instantly made this quarter one of the most valuable modern coins ever discussed. That value isn't just about rarity, it's about narrative, because collectors don't just buy metal, they buy stories, and this coin tells a story of human error, experimental ambition, and the thin line between ordinary money and unimaginable wealth. Imagine how many 2023 quarters you've handled without a second thought, how many you've spent, lost, or ignored, and now imagine that one of them could have been the very coin that collectors dream of owning, the one that could pay off debts, buy homes, or secure generations of financial freedom. This is why I keep saying, and I'll remind you again later, don't go anywhere, because the next upcoming coin we'll talk about takes this idea even further, pushing the boundaries of what a modern mint mistake can do to a coin's value, and you won't want to miss how these coins connect in ways most people never see. Back to the 2023 P quarter. Another factor driving its value into the stratosphere is how few confirmed examples exist, with estimates ranging from as few as 3 to possibly under 10 authentic specimens worldwide. And that scarcity creates a feeding frenzy among high-end collectors who specialize in modern-era coins, a niche that has exploded over the last decade as people realize that you don't need a 200-year-old coin to own a masterpiece. Auction history, though mostly private, includes one notable public appearance where a similar but less dramatic 2023 P-era quarter fetched over 6 figures. And that sale alone ignited speculation about what the fully documented compound-era versions could achieve, especially when paired with pristine mint state grades. Collectors love coins like this because they challenge assumptions. They force experts to admit that even with modern technology, the mint is still capable of producing miracles by mistake, and that thrill is addictive. There's also a psychological element at play because the idea that such a valuable object could still be out there, possibly sitting in a drawer, a jar, or a forgotten roll of change, creates a sense of urgency and fear of missing out that drives people to search obsessively through their coins. I've heard stories of families spending entire weekends checking every quarter they own, hoping to find that slightly heavier feel, that unusual edge, that subtle doubling that could signal a life-changing discovery. And every one of those searches keeps the legend of the 2023 P quarter alive. And just when you think the story can't get any more intense, remember this. Experts believe that not all of these coins have been found yet, meaning the biggest reveal might still be waiting for someone who doesn't even know what they're holding. Stay with me because after this coin, we're moving into another 2023 quarter that carries its own unbelievable secrets, and the transition from this one to the next will show you how a single year can produce multiple modern treasures, each with a story more shocking than the last. As we reach the end of this chapter, let this sink in. Most people would spend this coin without realizing its fortune. Most people would never think twice about a 2023 quarter. And yet that's exactly why this coin is so powerful, because it hides in plain sight, daring someone to notice. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, and it's coming up right after this.